You know, after 30 years of delivering babies, I've learned that a mother's body speaks a language that medical textbooks never teach. It's not something you can measure with an ultrasound wand or track on a fetal monitor. It's quieter than that. Deeper. It's the reason women wake up in the middle of the night for no reason and check on their unborn child. It's the reason they count kicks like a prayer. And it's almost always right. I remember a patient named Sarah. She was 34 years old, healthy as could be, and this was her first pregnancy. Everything had gone smoothly. The kind of pregnancy that makes other women jealous. No morning sickness past the first trimester, no gestational diabetes, no high blood pressure. She used to joke that her baby girl was already polite because she never gave her mother any trouble. But Sarah had a ritual. Every single night before bed, she would lie on her left side and place both hands on her lower belly. She wasn't looking for kicks. She was looking for the head. She had learned from her midwife that a baby's head feels like a small, firm ball, like a grapefruit. And for weeks, she had found it right there, low against her pelvis, exactly where it was supposed to be. That ritual gave her peace. It was her way of saying good night to her daughter. She would close her eyes, feel that round firmness, and know everything was fine. Then came the night everything changed. She was 37 weeks and 3 days pregnant. Her hospital bag was packed. The car seat was installed. She had washed all the tiny pink onesies and folded them neatly in the drawer. She was ready, or so she thought. She went to bed around 11 that night, same as always. She did her ritual, and she felt the head. Low, firm, present. But at 2 in the morning, something woke her up. She never could explain what it was. Not a sound, not a pain, just a feeling. A heavy, sinking feeling that made her open her eyes in the dark and place her hand on her belly without thinking. And that's when her heart stopped. She didn't move right away. Sarah told me later that she lay there for almost a full minute with her palm pressed against her lower belly, refusing to believe what her fingers were telling her. Because what she felt, or rather, what she didn't feel, made no sense. The head was gone. The grapefruit-shaped firmness she had checked every single night for weeks had simply vanished. Her first thought wasn't panic. Her first thought was confusion. Maybe she was still half asleep. Maybe she had positioned her hands wrong. So she lifted her nightgown, turned on the small lamp on her bedside table, and tried again. She pressed deeper this time, moving her fingers in slow circles across her lower abdomen. Nothing. Just soft, squishy tissue where a hard, round head used to be. Then she moved her hands higher, up toward her ribs. And there it was. A firm, round lump, nestled right underneath her right rib cage. Her baby's head had moved. Not down. Up. Her unborn daughter had flipped completely inside her while she slept. She sat up slowly, her back against the headboard. Her husband, Mark, slept soundly next to her, his breathing slow and steady. She didn't wake him. Not yet. She wanted to be sure she wasn't imagining this. She got out of bed and stood up, hoping gravity might settle the baby back down. She placed her hands on her belly again, this time standing in front of the mirror. Her shape looked different, fuller at the top, emptier at the bottom. She pressed her fingers into her lower abdomen and felt nothing but softness. That's when the first wave of real fear hit her. Not the gentle worry of a new mother. The cold, suffocating fear that makes your throat close up. She knew what a breech position meant. She had read about it months ago, in the early days of her pregnancy, when she was devouring every book and article she could find. She remembered the words: C-section, cord prolapse, difficult delivery. She remembered skimming past those paragraphs quickly, thinking it would never happen to her. Now she was standing in her bedroom at 2 in the morning, alone in the dark, holding a belly that felt completely wrong. She stood there for a long time, just breathing, in and out, trying to slow her heart down. But every time she placed her hand on her belly and felt that hard lump up near her ribs, her pulse raced again. She needed answers. She needed to know if this was dangerous. She needed to know if her baby was okay. So she did what most of us do in the middle of the night when we're scared and alone. She reached for her phone. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, the blue light from her screen casting shadows across her face. She typed into the search bar. Baby flipped to breech at 37 weeks. The results came back instantly. Thousands of pages. Thousands of stories. And most of them were terrifying. She read about something called cord prolapse. That's when the umbilical cord slips down below the baby's presenting part. If the cord gets compressed, the baby's oxygen supply stops. She read that breech babies have a higher risk. She read that if your water breaks when the baby is breech, you need to call an ambulance immediately. She read stories of mothers who waited too long. Mothers who lost their babies. Her hands started shaking. She tried to find reassuring information. She really did. She looked for stories about babies flipping back on their own. She found a few, but they were buried under pages of warnings and complications and emergency C-sections. The more she read, the worse she felt. Every click led to something scarier. Every new article introduced a new fear she hadn't even considered. She thought about waking Mark. But then she thought about what she would say. The baby moved and I'm scared. He would probably tell her to call the doctor in the morning. He would probably go back to sleep. And part of her wondered if he was right. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe this was normal. Maybe every first-time mother panics about something at 3 a.m. But then she felt a kick. High. Right under her ribs. And she knew. This wasn't normal. Something had shifted. And she couldn't unfeel it. If stories like this touch your heart, you can show your support for the channel. Because moments like this remind us why these real pregnancy stories matter. They help mothers feel less alone in the dark. She couldn't lie down anymore. Every time she tried to settle back into bed, her body would tense up and her mind would race faster. So she did the only thing that felt right. She walked across the hallway to the nursery. The room was dark except for the soft glow of a nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. The crib was empty, the sheets freshly washed and tucked in tight. A small rocking chair sat in the corner. The same chair where she had spent so many happy hours dreaming about her daughter's arrival. Tonight it became something different. Tonight, it became her watchtower. Sarah sat down and wrapped her arms around her belly. She started counting kicks. Not casually. Desperately. Every tiny movement felt like a sign of life, and she clung to each one. A roll here. A flutter there. A hard jab near her stomach that made her wince. The baby was moving. That was good. But the movements were all wrong. Too high. Too different. She talked to her daughter in the dark. Quiet whispers that no one else could hear. Please turn back down, baby. Please. Mommy is scared. She rubbed her belly in slow circles, hoping her hands could guide the baby back into position. She tried lying on her left side on the nursery floor, because she read somewhere that gravity could help. She tried putting a pillow under her hips. She tried everything her exhausted, frightened mind could remember. Nothing worked. The clock on the wall ticked slowly. 2:30, 3:15, 4 o'clock. The world outside her window was silent. No cars. No birds. Just the sound of her own breathing and the occasional kick from a baby, who had no idea that her mother was falling apart. At 5 in the morning, Sarah stopped crying. Not because she felt better. Because she had no tears left. She just sat in that rocking chair, rocking back and forth, her hand never leaving her belly, waiting for the sun to rise. Waiting for permission to be scared out loud. When morning finally came, it didn't bring relief. It brought something almost worse. It brought normalcy. Mark woke up at 6:30, stretched, yawned, and smiled at her like it was any other day. He found her in the nursery, still in her nightgown, dark circles under her eyes, her hands still pressed against her belly. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked, his voice groggy. Sarah shook her head. The baby flipped. "She's breech. I felt her head up near my ribs all night." Mark walked over and placed his hands on her belly. He pressed gently, then shrugged. "Feels the same to me, babe. I think you're just tired." She wanted to scream. Instead, she took a deep breath and tried again. "No, Mark. I'm not guessing. I know my body. I know my baby. The head was low last night. Now it's up here. She lifted his hand to her right ribcage. Feel that? That's hard. That's her head. Mark frowned. He pressed again, then pressed her lower belly. I don't know, Sarah. It all feels kind of the same to me. Maybe you slept weird and you're imagining things. Those words landed like a slap. Imagining things. She had spent 7 hours awake, terrified, counting every single kick, researching complications, crying alone in the dark. And the one person who was supposed to believe her was telling her it was all in her head. She didn't get angry. She got quiet. And that quiet scared Mark more than her fear ever could. Just call the hospital, she said softly. Please. Just call them and ask if we can come in. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I can't sit here all day wondering. Mark hesitated. She could see the doubt in his eyes. He thought she was being dramatic. He thought this was first-time mother anxiety. But he pulled out his phone anyway and made the call. The receptionist said they could come in that afternoon. Sarah shook her head. Tell them it's urgent. Tell them I think the baby turned breech. Mark sighed but repeated the words. The receptionist put them on hold. And Sarah sat in that rocking chair, waiting to be taken seriously by a world that kept telling her she was overreacting. The birthing center was only 15 minutes away, but the drive felt like an hour. Sarah sat in the passenger seat with both hands pressed against her belly, her eyes fixed on the road ahead, saying nothing. Mark kept glancing over at her, clearly uncomfortable with her silence. He tried to make small talk. She didn't answer. He reached for her hand. She let him hold it, but she didn't squeeze back. When they walked through the hospital doors, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Finally, someone would listen. Finally, she would get answers. The waiting room was quiet, filled with pregnant women flipping through magazines and couples talking softly. Normal people having normal days. Sarah envied them. She approached the reception desk. A woman with reading glasses and a tired expression looked up at her. Name: Sarah Mitchell. I called earlier. I think my baby might be breech. The receptionist typed something into her computer, then frowned. I don't have you scheduled for an ultrasound today. Your next appointment is in 3 days. I know, Sarah said, her voice shaking. But something changed overnight. I need someone to check the baby's position. The receptionist glanced at Mark, then back at Sarah. Her expression was kind but firm. Honey, unless you're bleeding or having contractions, we really can't fit you in today. The schedule is completely full. These are the kinds of concerns your regular appointment can address. Sarah felt the floor drop beneath her feet. 3 days. She was supposed to wait 3 more days, not knowing if her baby's cord was at risk, not knowing if her water could break at any moment with her daughter in the wrong position. I'm not leaving, Sarah said quietly. I'll sit here all day if I have to, but I'm not leaving until someone checks my baby. Mark touched her arm, embarrassed. Sarah, maybe we should just... No. Her voice broke. I felt her turn. I know I did. And I am not going home to wait 3 days while something could go wrong. She walked to a chair in the corner, sat down, and folded her hands over her belly. The receptionist watched her for a long moment, then sighed and picked up the phone. Sarah didn't care if they thought she was difficult. She didn't care if every person in that waiting room thought she was crazy. Her daughter's life was worth looking foolish for. 2 hours. That's how long Sarah sat in that waiting room chair. 2 hours of watching other pregnant women come and go. 2 hours of Mark shifting uncomfortably beside her, checking his phone, sighing under his breath. 2 hours of her own heart pounding so loudly, she was sure everyone could hear it. Then finally a nurse appeared. Not the receptionist. A different woman, older, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. Sarah? I'm Denise. I heard you've been waiting. Come with me. Sarah stood up so fast her knees almost gave out. Mark followed behind her as they walked through the double doors into the examination area. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and hand sanitizer. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Sarah had dreamed about this moment so many times. The final weeks of pregnancy, the last few checkups before meeting her daughter. But in those dreams, she was happy, not terrified. Denise led her to a small ultrasound room. The doctor will be here in a few minutes. Let me just get you set up. Sarah lay down on the exam table, the paper crinkling beneath her. She pulled up her shirt and exposed her belly. Denise squeezed the warm gel onto her skin, and Sarah flinched slightly at the cold. Then the nurse placed the ultrasound wand on her lower abdomen and moved it slowly. Sarah watched the nurse's face. Nothing. No reaction. Just focused concentration. Then the doctor walked in. Dr. Matthews. A woman in her 50s with gray streaks in her hair and a calm, steady presence. She had delivered hundreds of babies. Maybe thousands. She smiled at Sarah briefly, then took the wand from Denise. I hear you're worried about the baby's position, she said softly. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Dr. Matthews placed the wand on Sarah's belly. The screen flickered to life. A dark shape. A tiny heartbeat flashing white. And there it was. Clear as day. The baby's head, round and perfect, tucked up high near Sarah's right ribcage. The feet curled down near her pelvis. A complete breech position. Dr. Matthews didn't say anything for a moment. Then she turned the screen toward Sarah. You were right, she said quietly. Your baby is breech. Sarah burst into tears. Not because she was sad. Because she wasn't crazy. Because she had fought for her daughter, and she had been right all along. Mark reached for her hand, and this time he squeezed first. Dr. Matthews pulled up a chair and sat close to Sarah, the ultrasound still frozen on the screen. The image showed the baby's position clearly. Head up, bottom down, tiny feet curled near her pelvis. Sarah kept staring at it, trying to memorize the shape of her daughter, trying to understand how everything had changed so quickly. Let me be honest with you, Dr. Matthews began, her voice calm but serious. Your baby is in a complete breech position. That means both her legs are folded, and her feet are down near the birth canal. At 37 weeks, the chances of her turning back on her own are less than 10%. Sarah felt Mark's grip tighten on her hand. What are our options? He asked. Dr. Matthews nodded, clearly having had this conversation many times before. 3 options. First, we can attempt an ECV, external cephalic version. That's a procedure where we manually try to turn the baby from the outside by applying pressure to your abdomen. It's successful about 50 to 60% of the time, but it can be uncomfortable, and there are risks. Second, she continued, we can schedule a planned C-section. That's the safest option for breech babies in most cases. It's controlled, predictable, and avoids the risks of a vaginal breech delivery. And third, Sarah whispered. Dr. Matthews paused. Third is a vaginal breech delivery, but I want to be very clear with you. Most hospitals, including this one, no longer offer that option. The risks of cord prolapse, head entrapment, and birth injury are significantly higher when a breech baby is born vaginally. I don't recommend it, and I won't perform one myself. Sarah closed her eyes. The word cord prolapse appeared in her mind again, the same terrifying phrase she had read at 3 in the morning. She thought about her baby's feet positioned so close to the birth canal. She thought about what would happen if her water broke right now, right here, before any procedure could be done. Is my baby in danger right now? Sarah asked, her voice barely audible. Dr. Matthews reached out and touched Sarah's knee. Right now your baby is fine. Her heartbeat is strong and your fluid levels look good. But we do need to move forward. And I need you to understand that if your water breaks before we address this, you need to come to the hospital immediately. Not wait. Not call. Come. Because that's when a breech position becomes an emergency. Sarah looked at Mark, then back at the screen. Her baby's heartbeat flickered like a small, steady star. I want to try the ECV, she said. If there's a chance she can turn, I want to take it. Dr. Matthews didn't try to talk her out of it. She simply nodded and explained what would happen next. Sarah would need to come back the following morning. She would receive an injection to relax her uterus. 2 doctors would press on her belly, attempting to rotate the baby clockwise or counterclockwise. The procedure would last no more than 5 to 10 minutes. And it would hurt. I'm not going to pretend this is easy, Dr. Matthews said. Some women describe it as the worst pain they've ever felt. Others say it's uncomfortable but bearable. I can't predict which one you'll be, but I need you to understand that we will stop immediately if the baby's heart rate drops or if your body isn't responding. Sarah nodded. She didn't care about the pain. She had spent hours alone in the dark, terrified that something would happen to her daughter. A few minutes of physical pain felt like nothing compared to that. She would have let them turn her inside out if it meant giving her baby girl a safer delivery. That night, Sarah didn't lie awake. She was too exhausted. She fell asleep holding her belly, whispering to her daughter, "Tomorrow we try. Just cooperate with mommy, okay? Please." The next morning, the hospital room felt colder than she remembered. Brighter, too. Machines beeped softly. A nurse named Lisa held her hand while another nurse inserted N4. The medication made Sarah's heart race slightly, and she felt her uterus soften, becoming less tight, more pliable. Dr. Matthews entered with another doctor, a younger woman named Dr. Chun. They positioned themselves on either side of Sarah's belly. Mark stood near her head, his hand on her shoulder. "We're going to start now," Dr. Matthews said. "Deep breaths, Sarah. You can scream if you need to. You can cry. Just don't hold your breath." The first push came without warning. 2 sets of hands pressed into her abdomen, one lifting the baby's bottom, the other pushing the head down. Sarah gasped. Then the pressure increased. Her eyes widened. Her back arched off the table. It felt like her entire body was being folded in half. Not the worst pain she had ever felt. Worse. She gripped the bed rails so hard her knuckles turned white. A sound escaped her throat. Not quite a scream, not quite a cry. Something primal. Something that came from a place deeper than fear. "Baby's heart rate is dropping," Dr. Chin said calmly. Pausing. The hands lifted. The pressure stopped. Sarah gasped for air, tears streaming down her temples into her hair. The monitor beeped again. "Steadier now." The baby was okay. "One more try," Dr. Matthews said. "Are you willing?" Sarah looked at Mark. He was crying. She had never seen him cry before. "Yes," she whispered. "Do it again." Moments like this remind us why these stories need to be told. If you believe in the strength of mothers who choose pain for their children, you can support this channel. Because every share, every like, every view helps another woman feel less alone in her fear. The second attempt was worse. Dr. Matthews and Dr. Chun repositioned their hands, one on the baby's head, one on the tiny bottom. Sarah watched the ceiling, counted the dots on the acoustic tile above her, and tried to surrender her body to strangers who were trying to save her daughter. "Pushing now," Dr. Matthews said. The pressure returned. This time they tried rotating counterclockwise. Sarah felt something shift inside her. Not the baby, but her own organs, her own muscles, everything being moved aside by hands that meant well but couldn't possibly understand what this felt like. She didn't scream this time. She went silent. And that silence worried the nurses more than any noise could have. Mark leaned down close to her ear. "You're doing so good, baby. Just breathe. Just breathe." Sarah couldn't breathe. The pressure was too much. She felt like she was being crushed from the inside out. Her vision blurred at the edges. She squeezed her eyes shut and pictured her daughter's face. A face she hadn't seen yet. A face she might not get to hold normally if this didn't work. "Heart rate is dropping again," Dr. Chin said, her voice tight. "Hold," Dr. Matthews commanded. The hands lifted. The monitor beeped slowly. Too slowly. 1 second passed. 2 seconds. 3. Sarah held her breath, waiting for the sound to return to normal. Beep, beep, beep. Steadier. Slower than before, but steady. "Baby is tolerating but not thriving," Dr. Matthews said quietly. "The head isn't moving. It's lodged under her ribcage. I don't think we're going to get this rotation today." Sarah opened her eyes. "One more," she whispered. "Please. One more." Dr. Matthews looked at Dr. Chin. They exchanged a silent conversation. Years of experience communicating without words. Then Dr. Matthews shook her head gently. "I can't," she said. If we keep pushing, we risk the cord. We risk your baby's oxygen. I'm calling it, Sarah. I'm so sorry. The baby isn't turning. Sarah felt the tears come again, but these were different. These were not tears of fear or pain. These were tears of defeat. She had tried. She had endured the worst pain of her life, and her body had still failed her daughter. Mark was fully crying now, his forehead pressed against hers. You tried, he kept saying. You tried so hard, baby. You did everything. Dr. Matthews placed a hand on Sarah's arm. This is not your fault. Some babies are determined to stay exactly where they are. Your daughter is stubborn. That's not a bad thing. Sarah laughed through her tears, a broken, hollow sound. She gets it from me. The room softened. The nurses began cleaning the gel from her belly. Dr. Chen removed her gloves. The emergency was over. Not because the baby had turned, but because Sarah had finally let go of the birth she had imagined and accepted the one she was being given. A C-section was scheduled for 2 days later. Sarah didn't argue. She didn't have any fight left. 2 days later, Sarah walked into the operating room wearing a hospital gown that felt too big and socks with grippers on the bottom. She had cried herself out the night before. Now she was just quiet, resigned, ready to meet her daughter, even if the path to get there looked nothing like she had dreamed. Mark held her hand as the anesthesiologist placed the spinal block. Sarah felt her body go numb from the chest down. It was a strange feeling. Being awake but disconnected from half of yourself. A blue curtain hung in front of her face. She couldn't see what the doctors were doing. She could only hear the quiet sounds of instruments, the soft murmur of Dr. Matthews giving instructions, the steady beep of the monitors. You're going to feel some pressure, Dr. Matthews said. No pain, just pressure. Sarah nodded. Mark kissed her forehead, and then she felt it. Not pain, but a deep pulling sensation, like something was being lifted out of her very core. And then she heard it. A cry. Not immediate at first. 1 second passed. 2 seconds. Sarah's heart stopped. She grabbed Mark's hand so hard she thought she might break his fingers. Then the cry came. Small at first. Then louder. Angrier. A furious little wail that filled the operating room and made every nurse smile. She's here, Dr. Matthews said softly. And she is perfect. They lifted the baby over the curtain for just a moment. A flash of pink skin, dark hair, tiny clenched fists. Sarah couldn't see clearly through her tears, but she saw enough. Her daughter. Her breech baby who had refused to turn. Her stubborn, beautiful, perfect daughter. They took the baby to the warmer. Sarah could hear her crying, still angry, still fierce. A nurse cleaned her up while another nurse counted fingers and toes. APGAR scores were taken. 8. Then 9. Healthy. Strong. Mark walked over to the warmer and came back carrying a small bundle wrapped in a white hospital blanket. He placed their daughter on Sarah's chest, right below her collarbone. The baby's crying stopped almost immediately. She turned her head slightly, instinctually, toward the sound of her mother's heartbeat. Sarah looked down at her daughter, at the tiny nose, at the miniature fingers curled against her chest, at the eyes that weren't quite open but seemed to know her anyway. You scared me, Sarah whispered. You scared me so much, little girl. The baby yawned, and Sarah laughed, really laughed, the kind of laugh that comes after a storm, when the sun finally breaks through the clouds, and you remember what warmth feels like. I've delivered hundreds of babies in my career. Some came easily. Some fought their way into the world. But every single one taught me the same thing. A mother's intuition is the most underrated medical tool we have. Sarah knew something was wrong at 2 a.m. She fought to be heard. She chose pain over surrender. And in the end, she learned what I hope every mother learns. That birth plans are beautiful dreams, but healthy babies are the only real victory. You cannot control how your child enters this world. You can only control how fiercely you love them once they arrive. And Sarah? She loved that little girl before she even took her first breath. That's the part that matters. That's always the part that matters.